Hello everyone, welcome back to theartshop.com.au. My name's Liz Gridley, I'm one of the staff artists here. Today, I would like to start by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people, the traditional owners of the land on which the shop stands, and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, the country's first creatives and art makers. Yay! Tonight we want to have a huge thank you to Canson Australia. So today's demo is very well kitted out. Thank you to Canson. They particularly brought out a new paper called Mi-Teinte Velvet at the end of last year, I believe in Australia at least, and we're looking at that, but not only that, we're looking at the rest of the Mi-Teinte range, which there's 2 more papers, and the Ampersand Pastelboards. So these are all different surfaces which you can use for pencil drawing, pastel drawing, any sort of dry media, no problem, and some of these do wet media as well, which is great for mixed media artists. And the whole idea of these ones is you come into an art shop and you see 5 different papers and you're like, why are they different? Why? What did they do? I don't know. So we want to play with it all tonight, and then at the end, when I've finished doing my blab blab, we can all sit here and have a play together. So that'll be really, really fun. So thank you, Canson Australia. So the first one we've got today is the Mi-Teinte 160 GSM. This is the standard pastel paper that's been around for ages and ages, which is great. Then we've got the Mi-Teinte Touch. Now the Mi-Teinte Touch, we don't currently have available on the shelf in store, but we can order it in. So it comes in pads and sheets. Then we've got the new Mi-Teinte Velvet, which is this one I've got examples of here. Absolutely lovely. We've got it available in sheets and pads. And then we've got Ampersand Pastelboards, which are a hardboard surface, and they're available in a huge variety of sizes, mostly in the 1/8 inch profile, which is easy to put in a picture frame, so they're very handy as well, and I'll tell you more about those in a bit. Canson papers in general. Canson's been made in France for about 450 years, so it's a brand that's very, very old. It's got beautiful heritage to it. They've got an air balloon as their logo, so it's that nice little sort of air balloon shape. The reason they have that is the Montgolfier brothers, they created the first manned flight in an air balloon using their papers to create the balloon envelope, which is really cool. So it was made of paper, which is just awesome. And even though Chinese and Asian floating lanterns and things like that have been around since 220 CE, yeah, this was 1782 when they did the first manned flight. It went for about 10 minutes apparently, and they were tethered because they didn't want to lose it. So yeah, that was just a cool fact. The Mi-Teinte range, everyone pronounced it a little bit differently. We don't know which way is right. The internet told me it was Mi-Teinte today. I've always said Mi-Teinte because I think it sounds more French. I'm Australian, yeah. I've heard it called Mi-Teintes, I've called it Mi-Teintes, it's all sorts of words, but I'm going to probably say Mi-Teinte most of the time for that reason. It means mid-tone or half-tone. So this was the first sort of coloured paper that came out from Canson rather than just being a traditional white, with the idea of having a toned paper to create artwork on. So Mi-Teinte 160 GSM, it's a double-sided paper and it's got that honeycomb texture, which is like little circles. So if you have a look at this one here, you can see when you draw on it, you get that little honeycomb texture. If you guys want to pass that one around, you can all have a squeeze. On the other side, it does have a fine grain as well, and you can use it on either side. So the problem we have with pads and things is everyone assumes you can only use it on that side because that's where you open it, but no, you can use it on either side. So highly recommend taking your pictures out as you go rather than leaving them together in a pad, or put glassine paper in between so that way they're all protected. Glassine paper is our archival, acid-free, non-smudge backing paper. It's $1.70 for a giant sheet. I believe it's a Canson one as well. We have the Canson Crystal glassine paper, and that's just a really good thing for any dry media that you're doing, so it's not smudging, be it if you're still working on it, if you're storing on it, anything like that, where if you want to keep your artwork smudge-free, glassine paper is a great way to go. If you're shipping it, anything like that. Fixatives are great. We're not going to go hugely into fixatives tonight because that's almost a whole demo on its own, but fixatives are one of those things you can't really remove them once you do it. Glassine paper, it's a nice easy way to keep the artwork as close to just freshly drawn as possible when you're using it. So yeah, that's just a storage thing. This paper, lots of other brands do this style of paper. It's a pulp dyed paper, which is rather than them apply a colour after the fact, they're actually putting colour in to the paper pulp while they're making it. So that means it's coloured the entire way through. If you tear it, there's no white edge or anything like that. It is coloured paper. Available in 50 colours, which is awesome. We've got this beautiful rainbow that I'm not going to pick up and ruin because you guys helped me with that, and thank you, which is wonderful. So 50 colours in the range. It's a huge range, which is lovely. Lots of neutrals, lots of brights as well. Not every brand does brights, so it's really lovely that Canson does both ends of the spectrum, which is wonderful. It has a high cotton content. I couldn't find how much cotton content, but it has a high cotton content, and that helps the paper just be robust. So it's quite flexible and it moves around. It doesn't crease unless you want it to, is the idea with that one. And it's not as good at wet techniques at 160 GSM. You can definitely sort of do an ink line and things like that on it, but in terms of washes and things like that, the paper will warp, but you can always try and flatten it under some books and things like that. And being the honeycomb texture, it is sort of likely to want to flatten out a little bit more again. These papers are also used heavily in framing, and Mi-Teinte also makes framing mount board with the same paper. So they make their own mount board with the same style, and that's often sold through the framers. So if you go to the framers, you can see the Canson logo on their mount board half the time. So we don't sell the mount board because we don't do framing, but yeah, that's just part of their commitment to a large variety of colours and temperatures and effects to complement any artwork, which is lovely. Acid-free, no optical brightness, and then they say on it, it meets the ISO 9760 code. Since we started playing with luminance and things, I've been looking at what the codes actually mean. It means it meets the standard for a permanent paper intended for documents. So intended for stable temperature, stable humidity, it should be pretty permanent. So the colour shouldn't change and dramatically or anything like that. Obviously, if it's under heavy UV or heavy temperature difference and things like that, it could affect the paper, but it meets at least that standard, which is really good. Yeah, so this is a great paper for when you're just starting out, pencils or any sort of drawing technique, especially if you're looking at using colours, if you're using mid-tones and things like that. The advantage of using a colour as opposed to a white is rather than making everything darker than your base, you can start somewhere in the middle and you can go lighter and you can go darker. By starting on a mid, be it a bright colour or a very neutral colour, either way, you can move either way, and it gives you a bit more control over the artwork as a whole, as opposed to a white piece of paper, everything's going to be darker than the background, and black piece of paper, everything's going to be lighter than the background. So starting somewhere in the middle gives you that control. It also gives you a beautiful colour complement if you're doing coloured pencil, because you don't need to fill in all the background absolutely completely. So that's another advantage. As we can see over here with, this is one of our staff artists. We're going to shout out two of our staff artists today. Laughing Horse Art does amazing pet portraits, and you can see here how the coloured paper in the background complements absolutely amazingly. Even this one's a half done one of Red the shop dog. We love Red. So this side here has had a lot more time, and then that side over there has had one pass with the coloured pencil. And you can see how much, even though starting on the black, that was more of a choice because of the breed of dog, because of Red, it's given her so much control to be able to choose where her brights are really bright and keep doing that sort of push-pull, which is lovely. But that one's not done on the standard Mi-Teinte. That one's done on the velvet. We'll get to that one in a minute. All right, so the next one I'm going to talk about is Mi-Teinte Touch. Touch is a surfaced acrylic paper. So it's this one here. And this one, it's a white paper, and then they've put on an acrylic surface. So the acrylic surface is sanded, and that gives a little bit of texture, and it means it absolutely grabs your pigment of whatever you're using, coloured pencil, pastel, anything like that. This is also a robust enough paper. At 350 GSM, you can do wet techniques. So you can do acrylics. I actually use these for oil painting when I go to life drawing, because it means I can start on a colour, I just pull it out, and it's a gessoed surface. So that's an acrylic gesso sanded surface. Oil paint is absolutely fine, as long as I don't go onto the white border where it's no finish, because then the oil will go straight through to the other side. So really, really handy multimedia paper, because you can hit it with just about anything, and it's really easy to store because it's flat. Comes in 10 colours in the Canson range, and as I said, we can order this one in, but we don't have it on the shelf. We do have its competitor, the Art Spectrum Colour Fix papers, which come in smooth and original. The surface of the Mi-Teinte is halfway between, so I would call it a medium. So it's not too rough, not too soft. But again, if you want to pass that around, everyone can have a bit of a feel of that one. Yeah, just as an idea. The idea of, again, having the abrasive surface is that it holds onto media really well. So as opposed to the honeycomb texture on the standard paper, which is just sort of a pattern in the paper trying to hold it on, the sanded surface is really sort of absolutely ridgy, abrasive micro surface. So it is grabbing, like a very fine sandpaper basically, grabbing exactly what you put on it. It does mean you don't have to use fixatives as much, which is awesome. And it also means you can layer. So the more layers you want to put on it with your medium, that tooth retains for quite a long time. As opposed to standard papers, such as the 160 GSM, it can have that problem of burnishing, where if you go over the surface too much, it will stop taking more pigment. And that's more happens with the coloured pencil range of things, but it can also happen with pastel, where if you do too many layers of colour and smudge it in, it'll stop adding more on top. It'll just sort of start skating off the top completely, and it sort of reaches that limit. yeah, sheets and pads in that one available, and we can order that in. You can blend on this paper quite well. It gives you a lot of control because the pastel sort of wants to stay where you originally put it. Then you can really choose to blend with a paper roll, a tortillon, or your fingers, or anything like that. I tend to be a big fan of using tools to blend over my fingers because fingers secrete oil, and oil, when combined with those different dry pigments, sometimes you'll find that it won't smudge any further or it'll get a funny mark. That's actually the oil from your fingers leaving a deposit on the paper or on the medium. So that's why they're a little bit less reliable. So yeah, the soft blending tools by Pan Pastel are really cool. There are a whole lot of like little palette knives and sponges and things. You can use soft paint brushes, you can use makeup brushes, you can use, the little paper stumps is the other one that we use a lot. So the little rolled up white paper stumps. So that's quite good. Yeah. Mi-Teint Touch is also very light fast, very resistant to light and time is the idea, and yeah, it can take wet techniques, as we said. So you can use acrylic paint on it, you can use watercolour on it, you can use ink on it. That is a different paper, so we'll worry about that in a sec. All right, now the new guy. Let's talk about the new guy. Let's talk about Mi-Teint Velvet. So Mi-Teint Velvet, as I said, it's pretty new on the scene. Its biggest competitor is Clairefontaine Pastel Matte. So I don't know if you guys have all heard about Pastel Matte. It's again a surfaced paper, so it looks almost like a white card on the back. And it's very robust. It's 430 GSM. So we've gone up from 160 to 350 to 430 GSM. So very, very robust, very hard to crease and all that unless you really mean to, which means this is really, really good for when you're doing finished artwork because it's going to stay really nice and stable, and then you can store it really easily, transport it really easily, frame it really easily, which we love. Mi-Teint Velvet is ideal for wet techniques and dry techniques again. So now I'm going to point out my other staff artist. This is Deb Webb Art. She does amazing mixed media work. And she has a YouTube channel as well, so YouTube, which is awesome. So this is an example she's done on the velvet using acrylic ink and pastel pencils, and we can see that she's absolutely sort of let herself be a bit fluid and have fun, and she's let things wash into each other. So the white ink and the navy ink were sort of both wet at the same time. She's allowed them to coalesce and move, so flooding and those sort of techniques, absolutely fine on the velvet paper, which is great. Then once it's dry, she's gone in with those pastel pencils and really allowed herself to blend out some colour, do some nice little highlights, those circles and these little marks she likes to make, and it just interacts beautifully. If everyone's really careful, I'm happy to pass that one around to have a look, or you can come up and have a look at the end if you want to. So just hold the edges is fine. Awesome. The Mi-Teint Velvet, originally it's probably been advertised mainly for pastel work, but definitely the pencil community is who have latched onto it. They have taken it up for like heck, and it is because the paper layers beautifully. This texture on the paper that they've applied, it's interesting because they don't say exactly what it is, but it's sort of slightly polymer, slightly sanded. I wouldn't call it a natural sand the way that the touch is. It definitely feels like it's sort of got, well, they call it a velvet finish for a reason, but it's definitely a smooth, suede-y sort of feel. And the idea with that is that you can layer and layer and layer like no tomorrow, and it won't have inconsistencies through the paper. So it's nice and consistent surface the whole way across. So it's got beautiful finish the whole way through. They have, how many colours? 14 colours available. And that goes again from neutrals to slightly more elaborate colours. They don't go into full brights in the velvet yet, but if it gets popular, who knows? They might bring out more colours, which would be cool. Having the velvet surface as opposed to the sanding, it is a bit gentler on your pencils. So that's another worry we have between the velvet and the touch, is that you don't want to just grind away your pencil in 2 seconds, because then you're spending all day sharpening and then it's a $4 pencil every drawing sort of thing. So, well, probably not that dramatic, but this example here, Laughing Horse Art has done a beautiful range of all different colour pencil finishes using the velvet, and how they come out with just sort of the one pass of 3 colours, how they blend together, and then she's used isopropyl alcohol to blend. So a lot of pencil artists like to use isopropyl alcohol to bring the colours together to get rid of that sort of spotty texture you get with natural coloured pencils. And this is really interesting to see how each different pencil reacts to it. Some of them have a little sort of bloom to them. It depends on the wax content versus the oil content versus the dry pigment content. So every pencil has its own recipe, and they all react a little bit differently. You'll see as well that some of them come out really, really bright straight away, and some of them are a little bit calmer and might need a bit more pushing and a bit more power to get through. So I highly recommend everyone have a look at that one to go through all the different ones. So we've got Polycolor, Chrome and Flow, Light Fast Studio, Pablo's, Holbein's, Pro Color and Colour Softs. I used the Colour Softs over here in my 3-colour example. So this is just a quick, 20-minute eye that I did, and that's a very soft pencil, the Colour Soft, which is great. Indigo, Bright Orange and White by Derwent. My main thing with this was just to see how much I could make different colours sort of really push together, and even though they're not complementary, because when you have beautiful complementary colours, it looks seamless and magical, and I'm like, no, let's go with alien colours so you can really see that they push together quite nicely. A much harder pencil that I tried was the Caran d'Ache Pablos. I did find they didn't want to lay down more after I did one layer as much, and I think that's mostly because of that hard tip. They don't want to sort of naturally smush together like a nice sort of creamy layer. They want to sort of really have their space when you've been putting them down. So this is a case where you can use hard pencils in some cases where you want a really clean colour, and then you can use softer pencils when you want to do those layering techniques and really get blendy, which is fun. Other things that you can use, pan pastel. Pan pastel is one of my favourites. So other than your standard soft pastels that come in a stick, you can actually get pan pastels, so it's more of a cake, and the idea of the cake is that you can use sponge tip applicators like the soft tool I had before to sweep across and then apply the colour. It's a great way to cover large areas. It also works beautifully with stick pastels and with pastel pencils or coloured pencils in some cases as well, depending on how heavy your pastel application is first. They complement the coloured pencils as well. A lot of colour pencil artists like to use pan pastels in their backgrounds if they want a soft bloom or if they want to just hint at something in the background. They complement each other really nicely. And there's no real law about using one first and then the other. You can back and forth a little bit, which is fun. This here is a stick pastel. They do say with the velvet that you don't need fixative at all. Depends on how much pastel you put on, would be my personal opinion. So at one layer, yeah, it's pretty solid. When you get 4 or 5 layers, it does sort of still want to pick up a little bit, so you still need to do your glassine paper or something like that, but the colours, so nice and vibrant because it really grabs on, and that's what I was surprised with this back here, that I could just sort of keep sticking the pastel on, and I've done no finger blending other than touching it with my finger to see if it comes off. Yes, of course.
So how does that compare to sanded?
To sanded?
In terms of the colours and
I had more control with blending and smudging, because with sanded, especially with the soft tools, the sanded papers chew these up after a while. The touch isn't too bad. The Colour Fix Smooth by Art Spectrum is probably the best for these guys because it doesn't chew them up. This paper is great with them as well. So in terms of the stick pastel in itself, this will still take quite a lot, but it doesn't sort of really grate away at your pastel straight away. But you can also lift it off a little bit easier as well. So I am happy to play with the erasers here if we all want to have a bit of a see what comes off. I've got my, how nice is this eraser? It's huge. We have the Pentel high polymer eraser, which is the size of your hand. He's so good. So yeah, if we have a look at the normal Mi-Teinte 160 GSM in terms of erasing, we just run a little line through, comes straight off, no problem, which is great. And then if we've got, this is the Colour Fix Smooth, or actually I can quickly, I'll draw something on the touch in a minute. Again, it comes off not too badly, but you can see how it sort of carries the colour a bit and it stains a little bit. So that's just something to note. And then if I go over here, okay, so it's had the same sort of staining, but I do find, at least even with the kneadable eraser, I find it very easy to lift off, which is cool, but not so easy that it's like falling off. So yeah, it's all about sort of figuring out what level of control you want. Yeah, so the kneadable eraser sort of blends it a bit again, and then allows it to sort of move, I would say. So I tend to use vinyl erasers to say, get out of here, I don't want you here. And then I use kneadable erasers when I just want to move or lessen the colour, sort of pick it back up off. And that's the other thing, you can sort of ball it up and just sort of pull it off a little bit and it will keep coming off. Keep coming off like that. Yeah. Did that answer your question? Yeah, it did. Good, cool. I sort of half forgot the question halfway through, so I'm like, ah. All right. Acid-free paper, of course. It does have a white backing on it, so just keep that in mind, that they're all white on the back, not double-sided. Yeah, definitely it's the layering, I think, is the main thing. The layering and the nice feel of the paper gives you lots of control.
So
yeah.
Like using creating texture with the pastel.
That sort of dotty, broken texture.
Like.
It does give a fair bit of that. If I just sort of, so if I just do the sweep here, Let's do a quick little comparison. So this is the 160 on the honeycomb side. So we can see that that immediately gives you that spotting sort of texture. And then if we go over the back, the fine grain doesn't give you that spotting, which is cool. So it sweeps on nice and easy. Then if we get the touch, you can see there with the sanded paper, not only has it pulled nicely, it's sort of distributed the pastel a little bit more, as opposed to here, it's sort of started and then it's petered off. So that's a big difference there. When the paper's really wanting to sort of grab onto the pastel, it will help it sort of drag and distribute. So as I'm pulling along, it's not just sort of plonking and then shifting, it's actually going smooth, smooth, smooth. Let's try and push it on.
Sponge feel on that.
Oh, nice. It's not beating it up. But you can definitely have a play in a minute and see how you feel about it. Works better if you do it on the table than if you hold it in the air. I learn all these little things. Thank you. Da. So again, this is our stick pastel, Art Spectrum. So that's the honeycomb side, breaks it up a little. No, that's the fine grain side, sorry. And then if I do the honeycomb side, very spotty. But some people love that. And you see finished artworks with the spotty thing, and it's just a personality of the paper, really. The touch absolutely gives a different texture again, but it grabs a lot more of the pastel, which is cool. And then where's my piece of velvet? Velvet. So, can you see how smooth and even that application is? And it feels lovely when you do it. It feels so nice. And then same thing if I grab the pan pastel. So super bright, that first deposit. It hasn't carried through as much as it did on the touch, but it's carried through a bit, and this is where I said you've got more control. So rather than it sort of wanting to pull and go consistently the whole way along, it goes where you ask it to go. So you can ask it to do a line, or you can ask it to do gradual build up, and then just keep grabbing more and sort of build it up as much as you want. Get even more, and then get really, really... I just want to play with this all the time. This is the thing. I just want to play with it. So yeah, lots and lots of control. Obviously that's on the black, so the colour will look much more high contrast than these guys. So just keep that in mind, that the black is quite sexy and illustrious looking. So that's a difference there. But yeah, it's a big difference in feel and just how much pastel is going to go down originally to create that texture, which is pretty cool. So we love that. Then we've got one more. We've got the Ampersand Pastelbord, which is this guy here. I've done a very half-done eye. So Ampersand Pastelbord, this one's made in the USA. So it's brought to Australia by Canson, but it's not made by Canson. It's made in America. Ampersand's their own brand. They made a whole range of different boards for different mediums, and their main aim with their museum series is that they're all archival and they're all going to stand the test of time. So they're a really good surface that's nice and robust.
This one's with pencil as well, not just
pencil and pastel, the same. So it's probably more similar to the touch and the colour fix in terms of the feel of the surface. It's a medium, they don't call it a sanded surface, but it's medium textured surface, and it is an acrylic application again. So it's probably more similar to that for that reason.
A couple charcoal in pastel.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The main problem
it's effects and...
The main thing with charcoal as opposed to pastel is artist pigment. So it's the same pigment used in paints and that sort of thing. It tends to be heavier. Willow charcoal, being burnt wood, being just straight carbon, it tends to be much lighter, and it tends to not want to layer up on top of itself in the same way that pastel does. So if you want something really gentle, or if you want to do a light drawing and then go heavier over it with pastel, that can be a really good way to use them together. But if you want a really heavy application of charcoal, tend to not play nicely with pastels, because then once you get heavy charcoal, the pastel doesn't want to go over the top. Because even on these nice papers where they're quite toothy, you will get to a point where the charcoal will fill it. So it gets too sort of slippery is the word I'm looking for, slippery, I would say. Yeah, pastel board. Oh, sorry.
You can do the nitrum or the liquid.
Yes, that's true. So we had a play with the liquid charcoal by Nitrum, and it feels like a paint, but it looks like intense velvet charcoal. It's so cool. So please check our previous video for Nitrum liquid charcoal, and standard Nitrum charcoal as well. Is pretty heavy, and it's a very consistent stick, but I'm not going to talk about that right now because that's all right. Side quest, do that side quest another time, but it's awesome stuff. And yeah, you guys were here for that, so you remember. Yeah, Pastelbord is made of a warp resistant FSC certified hardboard. So it is made to be archival. It's got an acid-free clay and gesso surface on the bottom, and they call it a marble dust finish, just to sound fancy, which is lovely. I don't know if it has actual genuine marble in it. It may. Traditional gessos often have marble dust in it, and that's what gives you that nice grip, is the idea. Again, these have a very consistent surface the whole way along, which is just lovely. So you don't tend to find any sort of organic change. It's just very, very straight, consistent the whole way. Big thing about these, they're very versatile and easy to move, and when we're talking drawing outside and doing plein air and things like that, these are not going to go off with the wind, they're not going to crease, they're not going to go weird. You can dunk them in water and they're fine. They are great for wet applications and dry, and I sort of skipped over that. The velvet is also great for wet and dry. So this is one, I put some acrylic paint on earlier today, just one thin layer of pink, and I just slopped it on and then it dried, and it doesn't feel any difference to my hand. This is a thin application, but still.
Do underpainting.
Absolutely, and that's what we saw with the Deb examples here, that you can sort of go nuts on it with the liquid mediums first. So she used acrylic ink and then layer over the top with dry media. So for mixed media applications, super, super awesome surface. And the touch you can use that way as well. It's mainly just that first 160 GSM. I wouldn't do that because you're going to get warpage issues, and it's not going to carry the surface as well. So if you want to frame it later, it's less likely to frame nicely. These guys, no problem. So we'll do a drawing on that at the end. And here, actually, can I just show off Deb a little bit more? These are some finished ones that she's done on the velvet. So this one up here is pan pastel. So that's these guys that I've been using. You can see she's done some really big soft passages, and then she's done smaller passages. I'm not sure if she's used pencils as well for the little bits. I have a feeling she's used pastel pencils as well. Absolutely awesome. And then this one at the bottom is oil pastel with coloured pencils, and that's how she's gotten that intense vibrancy, which is so cool, because the oil pastel just wants to go straight into the surface. It's just so happy there. And again, it's not sort of going to skate over the, if you use glossy papers with oil pastel, they sort of don't want to grip right. So this is just absolutely gone straight on, and it's just brought so much life to this one, which is just awesome. So we love Deb Webb Art. Thank you for your example. I'll put that up there, so it's at the top. Hooray. Yeah, the pastel boards come in 4 colours. They come in grey, green, white and sand, which is quite handy. So you've got 3 neutral colours and then a white. But the good thing about these is you can paint them. You can paint them a colour first. You can go the whole way across with a thin acrylic or with an ink or anything like that and just completely change the colour. So if you buy a white one and you want a yellow board, paint it yellow first and then go nuts with it. So I find that very handy, again, for life drawing, because I can just sort of put whatever surface on I want, and then I can go to life drawing, pull it out of the bag, go bang, bang, bang. Easy, which is wonderful. Also great, again, for plein air, because you can do a quick acrylic background, wait for it to dry, then go in with all your detail and structure.
If you just use pastel on that, and you're not happy, can you wash it off?
Yes, you can. You can get a wet sponge and you can wash the pastel straight off. So that's quite handy with these boards. So if you want to, use a sponge, I tend to sort of wet the board a little bit first and then I go across with the sponge. If you use a really nice fine sponge, it will toothy up your sponge a little bit, so just be wary of that. But a cheap chuck swipe, no problem. So that's quite handy with those. I don't know if I would dare with the touch papers or anything like that, because it's more likely to get the white edges wet and, again, maybe increase warpage on the paper. So probably not worth it. But these guys, go for it. Even oil paint and things like that, I've sanded them sometimes to sand them back, or layered up a new painting on top of an old one, no problem. Again, it's a gessoed surface, so they work well for oil painting. If you want a toned ground and you haven't had time to tone your gesso board, which is one of the other boards that they provide, which is great for oil painting, but sometimes I'm lazy and I'm leaving the shop and going to a session, so I'm like, give me the grey one. I need the grey one. The tooth is a medium tooth again, and they're easy to frame because this is about the same width as the board in the back of most frames. So you can buy pre-made frames, take out the backboard and chuck one of these in. They are made in similar inch sizes, and that's quite good. We're going to have a lot of play now because I haven't been able to do as much demo, but feel free to come up. You can absolutely play on all these examples, maybe not that one. And then we've got a range of pencils as well as pastels. The last thing I was just going to go over a little bit, if you are a pan pastel user like me and you are a bit of a klutz and you accidentally drop it and it shatters, you can fix it. Basically all you need to do, I take a palette knife and I just quickly chop it all up a little bit more so it's a real fine dust. You just sit there and tap it very gently, and then once it's a nice fine dust, pat it all nice and soft down the bottom, and then you want to take some isopropyl alcohol. We sell the Derivan isopropyl alcohol, and you just pour it into the pan. It will turn it into a paste, and then when it evaporates off, you've got a pan again. In terms of getting a nice texture, once it's in, I just sit there and go tap, 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 and it just means any air bubbles will pop out because some of that dust may have air underneath. So if you do the tap, tap, tap method, you drive everyone in your house nuts, but other than that, it evens it all out and makes it nice and smooth. So it sort of looks like you're playing with like a plaster or something like that, especially because I keep breaking my white ones. Why? But that's just an easy way to fix that. So yeah, I just wanted to go over that because that's a trick not a lot of people know, but it's quite fun because pan pastels, that's the one bad thing about them. You don't want to break your cake, but that technique also works for eyeshadows. So hey, works for both. We love that.
With the velvet, does that come on a board as well, or is it only?
It's only in sheets at this stage, sheets and pads, yeah. So it comes in grouped pads where it's got different colours in the pad, or it's also got white and black pads, I think, as well. Just check it, yeah. And then, yeah, the individual sheets, obviously you can cut them up yourself. So that's the only disadvantage of the pastel board is once you've got your size, that's your size, unless you've got a drop saw and you're really committed. But the velvet, the touch and the standard mouton, you can cut up to whatever shape you want, and the big sheets work out quite good value that way. Yeah, which is lovely. So I'm gonna sit here and have a play on this one, but I reckon let's all have a play, and thank you all so much for listening. Yay, thank you for coming. That's all right. It'd be very fast, so I think for life drawing it would be really nice to just do a faster pull line. I'm going to take it and a lot of the time I do that. I make a cloud of black and then I start cutting out. Yeah.